Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Okay, we're on Lamed Testament Aleph.
Hi, Joseph.
Morning, Ariel says hello. Okay, Lamed Test 39a. A new piece of the Gemara. Amar Rav Zera. The first word of the line is the Zayan. Amar Rav Zera. Middle of the page. Mr. Haber, do you have it? Amar Rav Zera. And it's the Zayin. First word is Dalet Zayin. Yud Yud Nun. Amar Rav Zera. Rav Zera says the following. Okay. Amar Rav Zera, ki avinan be Rav Huna, when we were by the yeshiva of Rav Huna. So we're going to get into, the question of foods, when you cut foods, when you grind foods, right? Let's say you make a potato kugel and you grind it very well. Does it retain the bracha? Is it hadama? Or is it shahako? Or these type of foods, let's say applesauce, baby applesauce, which is very fine, or be even very finely ground, very. So what's the halach on those things? So we have the story today based on our Gemara. Most probably will be the source for those questions. So Amar Rav Zera, ki havinan bei Rav Huna. We were at the yeshiva Rav Huna Amalon. He said to us, Hani gargelide de lifta, the heads of the turnips. What's the bracha? So he says, paraminu primas rabba. If you cut these turnips the head of the turnip into nice sized pieces, then the halacha will be bori priyadama. The bracha is bori priyadama. But if you go ahead and you cut into small pieces, you dice it, so to speak, or maybe dicing it, prima zuta. If you cut into very small pieces, he says that the bracha would be shakol niyeh b'dvaro. And the reason why would it be shakol niyeh b'dvaro if you cut into small pieces? So he's of the opinion that it changes. The dicing affects the turnip. It loses its strength because you cut it very, very such small little pieces, and therefore it went down in its level. Like we said, there's something called an upgrade. Something called, I don't know if there's something called a downgrade. Is there such a word called a downgrade? So it was downgraded by this cutting very small. It downgraded the product. He's of the opinion that there's a change. There's a change in the product. That's a negative change. And just like we said in the past, if you have a food that as a result of the cooking, the food becomes downgraded, we said that then the blessing would change, right? So he's looking at the dicing as a downgrade, as a negative effect on the food, and therefore this is not considered the normal best way of the fruit. So therefore the blessing changes. Is that clear? That's the opinion of what they said in the yeshiva of Rav Huna. Now, the Gemara continues, but v'chi asi libei Rav Yehuda, when we came to the yeshiva of Rav Yehuda had a different opinion regarding these heads of these turnips. Amalan, he told us, idi v'idi bori priyadama. He says that really both are bori priyadama, both whether it's cut this vegetable, this head of the turnip into large, nice sized pieces, or you cut the head of the turnip into dice it into very small pieces, because the hayde paminu tvei, that which way they diced it when they would cut it very small, ki hechi de namtik taimei. They wanted the taste to be sweeter, and therefore it's not a negative. It's not something that makes it. We look at change in the fruit and then that it went down in level. It just became sweeter as a result of the cutting, of the making it very small, and therefore it's a positive thing. And it's a positive thing. Most probably, if it's sweeter Maybe it's not as sharp, perhaps. Um, the taste is it's an improvement. Since it's an improvement, so therefore it's the bracha remains. It's not considered. This is the way that people plant the fruit for this type of thing. That you should dice these turnips, and the taste is good. Morning, Shmuel.
Boker Tov.
Boker Tov. So that's what the Gemara concludes regarding these the dicing of these heads of the turnip. Amar of Ashi. Now, so now based on this Gemara, where you have the dicing of the food, and we said that as a result, the question is in the Gemara: is the dicing, would the dicing change the bracha or not change the bracha? Right? And now, if you learn, now the question: how do you learn this Gemara? If you learn the Gemara that the Gemara was thinking that dicing is a negative, there's a change in the negative, correct? So therefore, if it wouldn't be in the change of the negative, that's what the Gemara concludes. So then the bracha would remain. So based on that, you could say that anytime you dice anything, you dice vegetables, right? You dice a vegetable, there's no negative effect in the dicing of the vegetables. Vegetable is made to be diced. It's a normal thing to dice a vegetable. So then the bracha on diced vegetables would also be a bar adama. What about? But that's it's a small little piece. What about if you crushed it completely, and it's no longer recognizable as the fruit? So that becomes a different question. So that's the. So I saw that the commentaries discuss. Let's see about this. I saw some here. The Stipler wants to say that if a fruit that's completely ground, the blessing would change, and he wants to say because the Gemara says by our head of the turnip, the Gemara says that the reason why it's hadama, even though it's diced into small pieces.
Bye-bye, good morning.
Good morning, Yaron. Morning, good to see you again.
Good morning.
Yes. Because you're making it, because the point of your dicing, the Gemara says that the dicing was sweetening it. So he wants to say, if something that you would crush and you grind, the blessing would remain the same. So why does the Gemara need to come on to this reason? If when you crush something, the food retains its original status, so why does the Gemara have to come on to the reason is that this is being done in order to sweeten the fruit? The Gemara can just say that it's the same thing, whether it's crushed or not crushed. Why does it have to come on? Because it's an extra benefit that's happening as a result of the dicing. So he wants to say that if it would have been completely crushed, then the blessing would change. So therefore, the Gemara needs to say that by this head of the turnip, even though you cut it to very small pieces, since it was done in a way to sweeten it, therefore it retains the original bracha. So again, the question, yes.
Like this is really the question also that I have. Forget about the Gemara for a second. It's like, why do we have to think about if we take an apple and we do anything with him, or we take banana, we take any fruit or vegetable that we know that we are holding in our hand, and we change the concept of the constant of the fruit, vegetable, whatever it is. Why do we have to change the bracha if it's the same thing, just in different form? You know what I mean?
Right. The answer is, it's a question. It's
like ice cream.
Right. Okay. Ice cream
is a great example.
Had they made the ice cream, because they changed it, you're saying from how they made the ice cream. Yaron.
Yeah, they change it.
So again, so to address the point is the question is this called the fruit? The question is when something is changed in such a significant way, could you call this the fruit? Could you call this the Priya Dama, the Priya Eitz, when it's totally when the fruit, the original fruit is not here in the sense of a fruit, was totally changed. So that's really the question. If we understand if there was a downgrade, that we all understand. If you have a food and you downgraded it, so when the Chachamim said you make a certain bracha on the fruit, you make a bracha on the fruit or the vegetable in the way that it's meant to be used. But if you downgrade it, that means that's not the way the fruit or vegetable is supposed to be used. Therefore, the bracha would change as a result of the downgrade. That seems.
I think his question is there a difference in taste, shape? If something, if he crushed it, the taste would stay the
Right,
same.
the taste would be the same,
Shape would
but the shape will be different, and that's the question.
What governs?
Right. So therefore, that will be a matter of question. That seems to be a matter of dispute. Do we say exactly what Yosef said? What's the difference if you crushed it, you didn't crush it? Taste stays the same. It might even taste stays the same. So therefore, you should say the same bracha. But others say, but it's not. That's not the fruit. It's no longer. That's not the fruit. That's not the way the fruit looks. It's not the way the fruit. And it's not the normal structure of that fruit. It's changed. It's no longer it's not its original state. And the blessing that the Chachamim instituted for fruits and for vegetables, if it could be clearly identified and looked at it, that's the fruit of the ground. That's the fruit of the ground. I could see it. I could look at it. I could see it. But if it's totally ground up, and therefore you have changed it, you have.
Shape is the.
I mean, it's the shape. I mean, I don't refer to the shape, but the point is that it's now totally ground up. It's not recognized. It's not. You don't see the original. That's the difference. That's why some would say by applesauce they'll make a difference between applesauce that's finely ground or applesauce that there's pieces of apples. If you have applesauce that's pieces of apples, you say butter creates. If there's applesauce that like baby applesauce, there's no pieces of apple in baby applesauce. So that's the question. Would you say a butter creates?
Crush a potato chip. Does it become stay high them
So if you make it into the flour, if you make it into like a flour of some sort, then that might make it into a shako. If if it's that would be according to that reasoning.
Take wise potato chip. Wise potato chips, theoretically, or another potato chip that's crushed. In the interpretation, maybe.
Again, but the question might be a difference. See, once it was made, it's already a potato. Now, if you cut a potato in very small pieces, once it's already, it could be that once it's already made as a potato. So now the question is now if you make it that way, if you make it when it's already crushed, that's the discussion over here, right? You made the applesauce. It was cooked or whatever in a way that now it was in a way that it was smooth. There was no pieces. But I'm not sure if once it was already made whole, once the product was completed in a way that would be a hadama. Let's say you take a potato. Now that you take a potato, it's already cooked. Now that you crush that potato, you still might retain the bracha hadama because it was when it was completed. It was completed as a real potato. Okay. Now let's continue in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, Ki avina be'Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi says, when I was in the yeshiva of Rav Kahana, Omalon, they told us the following halacha. Tafshila the silka, a food of, let's say, beets. They cooked the beets, and they added flour to the beets when they cooked it, and so on and so forth. They made some sort of nice, tasty beet. So the Gemara first says, "The lo mafshi bo kimcha." If you do not put a large amount of, you don't put a lot of flour. So the bracha is borei pri adama. So he wanted to say that the bracha is borei pri adama because he wanted to say that the beets are the main thing, and the flour is secondary. Even though we had a Gemara earlier that says that if you put any of the 5 grains in, the bracha will be a borei minei mezonot. So he says, so the commentaries deal with this question. So some want to say, some want to say over here, if you would put a lot of flour, the food would not be good to eat with the beets. So therefore, some want to say that this small amount of flour is not considered something of significance. Some want to say that if you would put a lot of flour, if you an item that if you add a lot of flour into it, it would help the food. So if you have a small amount of flour, that also be considered significant. But however, in a food, that if you put a lot of flour, it would not be good to eat. Therefore, the little flour, small amount of flour won't be considered anything. That's one approach. But obviously, the commentaries have to deal with this issue. Why is the beets with the flour different than any other item that you say if you put flour into it, the bracha will be borei minei mezonos? But the Gemara at this point says that if you have beets and you add flour to the beets are the main thing. Beets, you say adama, and therefore that's it. You say a bracha borei pri adama. For some reason, the flour is not, we don't look at the flour here as significant like any other time. We usually say that if you have flour mixed with foods, it's significant. Here we say the flour is not significant. And then the Gemara says, Hadama, then he says, Idi v'idi, whether it's a food that has a small amount of flour, whether it's the beets that have a small amount of flour, or whether it's the lefes, the turnip that has a lot of flour, borei pri adama. The bracha would be a borei pri adama. Why? Because the reason why they put the flour in is not for the taste. They're putting the flour just to hold it together. Through the cooking, that it shouldn't fall apart. Why do they put in let's say in the turnip, right? Because the Gemara made a distinction. They said the beets that have flour, they don't put so much flour in the beet food. When they cook the beets with flour, they put a small amount of flour. So therefore, originally they said it's a borei pri adama. But the lifter turnip, they make it with a lot of flour. When they make that food, they cook the turnip. Therefore, they said if it's a lot of flour, you should make a borei minei mezonot. And then they said no, there's no difference between the food that they make with these two foods. Even when you have a lot of flour that's made with the turnip, but since the point of the flour is only to hold it together, and the buki ba'alma avdilay, just to hold the food together, that it shouldn't fall apart. Therefore, it's considered secondary, and therefore you don't say a bracha on the what? On the flour that's contained in that food item. Omar Rav Chiz-
Only address the beet and the turnip.
I mean, right. This could,
That's consequence of flour.
right, because beforehand we said other vegetables and other things that have flour would be mazono, and here it seems that these both are, because both cases the flour, at least for sure for the turnip, is just to hold it together, and therefore it's not considered significant. Therefore, you do not say a borei minei mazono. Right. You add flour. There's certain foods that they add flour just to hold the ingredients together. Omar Rav Chizda, Rav Chizda says. Now, if you want to look, Omar Rav Chizda says, Tavshil tel terodim. If you make a food out of beets and you cook beets, and you know the Europe people from the old timers that I remember years ago, my father of blessed memory, they loved beets. Beets was a very you know, very desirable food. It's not so popular today, but I think the older generation from used to be into beets. No,
You know, you're maybe right.
yeah, you're right. So
Not
it's
so popular.
not so popular today at all. But yafa lelev, it's very good for the heart. The Gemara says, cook beets. You make a food out of beets. It's very healthy for the heart. B'tov le'enayim, and it's very good for the eyes. V'kol shekain lifnei ma'ayin. It's very good for the stomach, and maybe that's why the people in Europe were into that food. It's very the Gemara. It says a lot of positive things about beets. Maybe we got to bring it back to the back in circulation.
I would say more vegetables have a unique color. Carrots are also.
Right. Right, but here we have three. I mean, the heart, the eyes, and the stomach. It's a lot. It's a one vegetable. It sounds very.
Which we drop.
And the people have dropped it, right? Abaye. So Abaye says, "V'hu diyasiv abei tapei." When do we say that that it has such that this beets is such a positive effect, such a healthy effect, such good healthy side effects? That's only if you cook it on the oven, you keep it on the stove, and it's boiling so much, avid toch toch. It makes the noise that you hear the sound that comes from the pot, from the oven that's cooked so well, and therefore it at that point the beets has really given a tremendous has really been cooked so well, and it gets dissolved well in the water that you're cooking the beets in. So at that point, that's that it reached a point that it's very well cooked, that it will give off these properties because
That changed. That changed.
no, it didn't change the bracha, but this is the level that it will give the proper taste into the water and into the whole food that you're making, that you're cooking. At that point, when you're having that beet soup, at that point, now it's going to have that positive effect from a health purpose reason, because we're going to see. We learned
from that if beet is not eaten, derivative of beet sauce or water came out of Berachos would be adamant.
So that's what we're going to get to right now. We're going to get to vegetables. What's the halacha? You cook vegetables, pea soup, and all that type of stuff. What's the bracha on, right? So we say hatama on that, and we're going to have to see. We're going to see that right now, but that there's an idea that that's the way it was made to be. That's that's the vegetable, that's the fruit. If it's made to be cooked in that fashion, so even though it's dissolved, right? You don't see you might not see the vegetable because the peas become dissolved into the soup. So therefore, the bracha could still be the hadama because there's many different approaches exactly on this point. Exactly why does it retain the hadama? We'll get to it hopefully right now. So the Gemara says, Amar Papa, and this is Mr. Haber's point coming up right now. Amar Papa. Papa now is going to discuss what is the bracha on Maya de Silka, the liquid of the beet soup. You act Maya de Silka, the water of the beet soup. You made beets and you kept it in and then after you made the beet, you put water in the pot, you put the beets in the pot, you cooked up the beets. It gave a tremendous, strong, nice flavor into the water. And now you didn't eat the beet, you removed the beets. So Maya de Silka Kisilka. He says that the water of the Silka has the same law, the same bracha as the beets. It retains the same bracha as the beets, and it therefore will be a bori priyadama. Maya de lifta, Maya de lifta, the water of the lifta that you cook the turnip, the bracha is also like the lefet, The bracha is also adama. And maya de kulishlaki ki kulishlaki. The water of all the vegetables will have the status of the vegetable itself. Now, so now based on this Gemara, right, it would seem that anytime you make a vegetable soup, that the bracha on the vegetable soup should be adama. I mean, it goes so far from this Gemara where it says the water, right? The Gemara is talking about the water of the silka, the water of the and the way of the beet. So now in the Shulchan Aruch, what do they say? They say Mayid the silka. If we take out the Shulchan Aruch and Reish Hey Sif Beis, he says about the water. He says the following. He says, the water that you cook the vegetables, you say the bracha that you say on the vegetables themselves, even though you only has a taste of the vegetable. Even though it only has a taste of the vegetable. But he says, but if let's say that's only true if you did not cook it with meat. Well, let's say you took a vegetable and you had meat and vegetables, and then you removed the vegetables from the pot, and then you only have left is the water, but the water now has taste is from the meat and from the vegetable, and the meat is more significant than vegetable, so therefore the bracha on that water will be a shako. So that's what the Shulchan Aruch says.
Does a vegetable have to be blended by cooking it and develop its appropriate taste? And yeah, to mix fine vegetable, not cooked, and therefore
the question is, what's the normal way to eat the vegetable? See, if you went ahead and you made it in a way that's not the normal way to eat the vegetable, and you ground it, let's say you grounded it raw, your case, and so we said there's certain vegetables we had in the Gemara, if it's meant to be made cooked, and therefore if you ground it and it's not in its normal, it's not in its what it's meant to be, you would say a shakol on that, right? We said let's say a raw potato, it's meant to be cooked. If you go ahead and you eat a raw potato, you say a shakol. Anybody says I want to eat raw potatoes. It's not normal to eat a raw potato. But things that it's not meant to be in that state. So the question would be, if it's not meant to be in that way, right? So therefore it should not be, it's not meant to be eaten raw. You see, the question is, the way the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim says, see, the Chafetz Chaim mentioned a point that if you cook the vegetables only for the liquid, and you have no interest in eating the vegetables at all, you're going to throw out the vegetables. It sounds like from the Mishnah Berurah that in that case it would be a hashakol on the liquid. So that needs to be looked into a little more. Usually the way we make our vegetables, we plan on eating the vegetables. When we cook our vegetable soup, all our vegetables that we look at with cooking, it's not to cook it just to get the liquid and throw the vegetable in the garbage. We're always, when cooking the vegetables, we're always leaving it in the pot. Whatever we cooked, whatever you made, pea soup or whatever it is. So therefore, all those things would be hadama. question would be, if you go ahead and you cook a vegetable and you're interested not in the vegetable itself, you want to throw the vegetable out, and you just want some of the liquid. That would be a different question to look into. But regarding practical, when we're cooking vegetables, we leave the vegetables in the pot that we're interested in eating the vegetables, and therefore vegetable soup, our Gemara will be hadama. Okay, that's the, and because it's made to be that way, and also it also, by the way, through the cooking, it also gives a very strong taste of the vegetable goes into that water also. It's a strong ave, and therefore that would be the bracha we retain the original bracha. Okay, so the Gemara says, Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa is about before the wide lines. It's about 6 lines before the wide line. The first word of line is Rav Papa. Amar Rav Papa, pshitali. 1 second. No, it's a few lines. It's the 4 lines before the wide lines. Boy Rav Papa. Rav Papa asked the following question. Maya de shifta. If you cook the Maya de shifta, what's the law with the liquid when you cook? The shifta is a certain grass. It's a certain herb that you put a little bit into the water, and then afterwards, let's say you cook it, and then afterwards you remove that herb that you put into. It's not like the case of the vegetables that we said that you leave the vegetables in. This is made just to give off a little flavor. It's a stick, like a stick of wood that contain an herb that contains within a flavor. You cook it, you put it into the pot, it gives off its flavor, and then you take that piece that thing, and you throw out the piece of herb that you use to give the flavor. You don't eat it. Now the question is, what's the bracha on that liquid that you cooked up using this thing? Because the vegetable itself, the fruit itself, you don't eat the fruit. The fruit, because you throw out that piece. You're just going ahead and but you got the liquid from that piece.
Like cinnamon stick.
And then you don't eat the cinnamon. That's what Avi's saying, right? Just take out the stick.
The stick out. So it's flavoring the whole.
Cinnamon stick.
How do they make it? They put the cinnamon stick in. But he said, let's say you put it into the tea and you're cooking it up that way, or whatever. You're using it as a flavoring, but you're not actually eating that food.
No, you cannot eat it.
So what's the law with the with the flavor that came out of that stick? So that's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara says, 1 second. So the Gemara says, the Gemara now explains the question. Limtuki time of the, is it because it's coming to make the flavor of the food better, and therefore since it's coming for flavoring, so maybe that should be like the fruit itself, and therefore if it comes from the ground, it should be adama. That's one side of the coin. Or the Gemara says, or levureiz huma avdilei. It comes to remove the bad odors of the dish. But let's say you're using this you're putting it into the pot with the other ingredients, not because you want to go ahead for the flavor of this item. Rather, this is used as a cleansing agent. The odor or the taste that comes out from this removes the, like deodorant. Deodorant is not for so much it's not a perfume. Perfume is for the smell. Deodorant is to take away that people shouldn't sweat and so on and so forth. So that's the question over here with this food. Is it for its flavoring? Therefore, it should be hadama. And by the way, this Gemara would seem to indicate, even though you don't plan on eating this food, it still would be hadama on the liquid that comes out, which is not like the Chafetz Chaim, that we said before. Oh, so that's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara says, Tashma, I'll prove from the Mishnah, I'll prove from the following. what the law would be. Hashevet. Which they're translating shevet as dill, right? What is the law for soup that has dill in it, that you made with dill? You're not eating the dill, and you're putting the dill in, and let's say and the question is for flavoring. So the Gemara, is it considered flavoring, or is it serving the purpose as just to give it that it shouldn't have a bad odor? Mishenos natam b'gdeira says once if you went ahead, let's say you had dill of truma, it was dill of truma, and hashevet mishenos. If you cooked, once you took the dill of truma and you cooked it in the pot, mishenos natam b'gdeira ein ba mishum truma. It lost there's no status of truma on the dill anymore. Why? Because the status of the truma on the dill was because the dill had a flavor. Now that you cooked it, the flavor of the dill went into the pot. The dill is now a piece of wood because it lost its content of its flavoring. Therefore, it's a piece of wood. It has no halachic status of truma. It's no more food of truma. And good morning, Sammy. And also, it was not be metamet tumas ochlim, that there's such a thing that a food could receive tuma, right? But here we're saying it's no longer status. It's not considered food anymore that it can receive tuma. It's not a food. Shma mina. So the Gemara says we see from here. We'll end with this. Limituki time of avdila. We see by the fact that it says once it gave a taste in the pot. So therefore, it's the purpose of the dill is not just as a cleansing agent to take away the bad odor, but rather the dill is to give its flavoring, and therefore shma mina, we can prove, and therefore that soup should be a bar piyadama because it has the flavor of the dill. Okay, I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Thank everyone for being here, and we hope everybody's brachot before every time they're eating something, they're thinking twice. What's the bracha I got to say on this? Bracha on this soup, on this, on this. Hopefully, it'll sensitize us, and if we're thinking Jews, then we'll have much more kavanah. We'll be much better. We'll do it right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, you see, usually the vegetables, a lot of the vegetables are very hard. So therefore, and they're not made. They're made to be cooked. In contrast to a lot of the fruits of a tree, which a lot of times you could eat it not in that status of cooking. So therefore, it could be the major difference between the vegetables that we said that take Ariel for you help, that the vegetable soup you make adama, and yet when it comes to some other fruits, let's say like we said like apple, that's apple sauce. We'll say that apple sauce that you have no pieces in it. You might say there might be people that will say you say a shako on the apple, right, the fine apple sauce. Because they'll say that the normal way to eat the apples is with pieces. Now you went ahead and you changed it in a way, so therefore maybe it might have lost its status. Right there. Take care, Sammy. Shmuel Rave, thank you so much for being here.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day. I always love to smile. Keep it up. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.